Hello and welcome to a new series of Inside Out Northwest with me, Diane Oxberry.
Tonight, as we count the cost of our Christmas spending binges, we reveal how to get out and stay out of debt.
It's not about just giving a loan and putting a plaster on and it's forgotten about. It's about working with the customer and looking at where they are and how we can move them forward.
We go to Knowsley to meet the charity that's taking on weekly payment stores at their own game by making everything cheaper.
It's a massive £300 saving.
Oh, it's huge and it's so simple.
It is simple and the opportunity's there for everybody.
And at a time when homelessness is perhaps the ultimate price to pay for debt, we meet the volunteers caring for the dogs of rough sleepers.
I can't fault them. You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have my dog. So yeah, they're brilliant.
Christmas shopping sprees will have sent many of us into the red, and here in the UK, over 8 million of us are struggling to cope with the amount of money that we owe. So how do we free ourselves from the spiral of debt and become more savvy with the money that we spend and save? We sent finance expert Jasmine Birtles to find out how to get back into the black.
I'm in Birmingham today with £500 to see if people are spenders or savers. So if I were to give you £1, would you like to spend it or save it?
I'm the spender.
I'll spend it, because I'm thirsty, I need a drink.
Oh, you clever boy.
Spend it. I've not got enough money to save.
While the team continue with our experiment, I'm catching up with debt charity Community Money Advice.
We're volunteers from Community Money Advice.
They're hosting a roadshow here in one of Birmingham's largest shopping centres.
Hey, Julian. Hello. Good to see you.
We're not selling anything.
January is when we get a lot of calls across the whole CMA network because people have spent at Christmas and enjoyed themselves and really not connected that with the consequences of what happens in the weeks afterwards when all those bills start coming in.
I was passing by and I just asked some advice because Christmas has been a little bit difficult because I have got myself into a little bit of debt.
Our aim today is to try and break the taboo that people have about spending money. We find in all of the advice that we give face to face with people that once you just get it out in the open and you start opening the post, that wall just evaporates.
Are you going to put it in the spending jar or the saving jar? Excellent. Oh, good.
Spend it. Yeah.
Out of the 500 £1 coins we've been giving out, just how many people decided to save and how many chose to spend?
148 would save them, but 352 would spend them. So it looks like Birmingham people like to spend.
Our experiment today was just a bit of fun, but statistics show we are a nation of spenders. The average household has £14,000 worth of non-mortgage debt, and 1 in 3 households in the UK has no savings whatsoever. Getting out of debt isn't easy. I should know, I've been there. But a unique project in London could have a solution.
I'm in the London Borough of Newham, which has the highest level of problem debt in the country. 1 in 4 people here is behind on a bill or a credit commitment.
Morning, welcome to Moneyworks.
Since Moneyworks opened 2 years ago, they've seen over 3,500 Newham residents use the service.
Just put in for an £800 loan, so see what happens.
Just get at least a good sum, like that, 200.
What's special about Moneyworks is that it offers loans in partnership with a credit union alongside debt advice.
It's not about just giving a loan and putting a plaster on and it's forgotten about. It's about working with the customer and looking at where they are and how we can move them forward.
How are you, Michael? Nice to see you.
Michael first came to Moneyworks 18 months ago, desperately struggling with £5,000 worth of debt.
I got very, very depressed and I tried to take my own life on several occasions because of the pressure of debt.
Ill health forced Michael to retire. This, together with the drop in benefits, meant he was struggling to afford basic living costs.
It was our washing machine that broke down. Always seems to happen around about Christmas time with us. I don't know why.
Michael couldn't afford to buy a washing machine outright, so he got one from rent-to-own company Bright House. At £9.50 a week, it seemed like a good deal, but the total cost amounted to over £1,600.
You end up paying astronomical amounts for small items.
Bright House told us they give people on lower incomes an affordable way to get everyday goods.
A lot of customers who come to us aren't even aware of some of the interest rates that they're paying, and, you know, it's an eye-opener to them.
I thought, my word, you know, all that money, it's just ridiculous.
I can just do a quick calculation to see other gas and electric suppliers.
Michael was given practical advice alongside a loan to pay off his debts.
We decided to offer him a MoneyWorks loan to pay off the Bright House loan, and Michael was £1,213 better off.
Michael is now debt-free.
Come to somewhere like MoneyWorks. It's a pity they haven't got it nationwide, and it worked wonderful.
MoneyWorks is proving so successful, other councils are now looking at doing the same.
So you're a little bit down today.
Half of those seeking debt help nationally have mental health problems. Wayne suffers from bipolar disorder, and this time last year he was in serious debt.
My wife and ourselves were experiencing problems with our rent, so we got a credit card to help us out. And unfortunately, it just spiralled out of control.
Wayne's credit card had an interest rate of 40%. He was unable to meet the monthly payments.
Did you look at the interest rate, or was it just a question of, you know, who'd give you a card?
Who'd give me a credit card, basically.
A loan with us
would be better
than paying the high interest that you're paying on that Bankwest card.
Back in Birmingham, and the roadshow is in full swing.
For people who've got credit cards and have got debts that are building up, the answer to solving the runaway credit is not more credit. Now's the time to actually cut up that credit card. Okay, fantastic. We've had people burst into tears at the moment that the scissors cut through because of the emotional tag and hold that the idea of credit has got with someone.
It might come as a shock to most of us, but by 7 years old, children have already formed their financial habits.
I've come to Curtin School in Boston in Lincolnshire to meet an expert team of super savers.
Hello, please may I have the courage to go deliver?
You can, yes.
I'm Lily and I'm the bank manager. I need to look after everyone's money and I need to make sure that nothing goes wrong with it.
My name's Taylor and I am the assistant bank manager. I have to supervise all the cashiers and make sure no one's misbehaving.
When we first started the project, we were asking children where they think money comes from, and they just think it comes from a cash point or it comes out of a till. They didn't really understand, which is why we introduced the idea of you need to work for your money and then you're rewarded.
Children can earn their Kurts by doing well in spelling and times tables, working in the bank or shop, and for special achievements.
You have 14 Kurts, what would you like to do?
Can I deposit them, please?
So this is an actual Kurt. There's the back of it. It's worth about 3p, but to these children it's worth a lot more. They can either deposit it in the bank here, or once they've earned enough, they can take some out and spend it in the Curtin store next door. I'm going to go in and have a look and see what I can get.
Children are often saving for over a year before they'll buy anything at all. I think the interest has made a difference as well. They see it as, well, actually, if I just keep my 50 Kurts in the bank over a year, I'm going to get an extra 30 Kurts.
It's clear to these children that saving reaps rewards.
So what are you going to buy?
A teddy.
Oh, and show me where the teddy is. Is it that one? Oh, lovely. Should we go in and buy it?
Yeah.
Come on then.
What we're hoping is that children are actually understanding and experiencing the process of saving and learning to wait for things.
They called him Tom.
Back at the roadshow, and the day is coming to a close.
So Julian, how's it been today?
We're seeing lots of debts, but the most important message is don't sit on it. Get help. There is no debt that we've yet seen that can't be sorted and get you to freedom.
And Jasmine Birtles will be live on the BBC Money Facebook page straight after tonight's Inside Out to answer any questions you may have about debt. That's the BBC Money page on Facebook, live from 8 p.m.
One of the ways that some people are getting into debt is by taking out loans for goods which appear to have small repayment options, but which actually, over the weeks and often years, build to substantial sums. I've been to Knowsley on Merseyside to meet a charity that's taking the weekly loan shops on at their own game.
They're along the high street and all over the internet. Shops aimed at people who struggle to get credit and who can only afford to pay small weekly amounts. But this convenience comes at a price: eye-watering rates of interest.
Just over a year ago, a new kind of weekly loan shop appeared here in Huyton, but its ethos is very different. The shop sells everything you'd need to furnish your home, and you can pay them back weekly. And because it's run by a charity, it won't cost you an arm and a leg. And they've even got tins of posh paint for under a tenner.
We grew out of a food bank. We are Knowsley Food Bank, and we were dealing with literally thousands of people every year who were in food poverty. But to try and understand the underlying reasons, we had to look at those reasons, and one of the main reasons was, of course, debt and how they got into debt. And we run an FCA registered debt advice programme, and we were dealing with people who were using 70% of their disposable income going to rent-to-own market shops. And we thought there must be something else we can do. There must be an alternative.
You've got a wonderful example of how you work against how some of the buy-to-own stores work, haven't you, in one of your leaflets?
Yeah. Well,
and it just crystallises the whole experience.
So on this particular one, we just compare this very simple Hotpoint fridge. We work with Corp Electrical. So again, we try to do this in a moral and ethical way. So Hotpoint fridge, if you went to a typical weekly payment store, the basic price would be £235.
Okay.
You'd pay £3 a week for 3 years, 156 weeks. That comes out to £468.
So you're already doubling what it costs.
Because we'll sell that same Hotpoint fridge for £144.
So that's a massive saving before you
start.
Just
before you start. It'll be £3 a week, but it's only for 1 year.
Yes.
So that comes out at £162. It's a massive £300 saving.
Oh, it's huge, and it's so simple.
It is simple, and the opportunity's there for everybody.
Isn't it morally wrong that people aren't saving up for stuff any longer, that people are buying stuff that they clearly can't afford?
I think it's a really good question. We've got to understand that we live in a consumer-led society. This is the society. Whether we think that's a good or a bad thing, and we can rail against it all we want, but the reality is that there's a dream being sold to people. Look at every TV advert. People are selling the dream. And people nowadays expect to be able to access that dream.
It is such a simple idea. A charity taking on the big boys, and the community are supporting it. So much so that new branches are opening in Bootle and Runcorn.
The charity also provides debt counsellors like Carol, who provide a free advice service.
So what sort of figures are we looking at in terms of personal debt?
We're working with over £1.5 million of debt with 103 clients that are open, and the majority of the debt is not mortgage. People look at that and think, oh, well, if it's a mortgage, that's it. It isn't. Very often it's council tax, or it's credit cards, or it's gas and electricity.
The debt isn't always from people who are unemployed, is it?
No. I know I've got people who are working 2 jobs. I have people who are working 3 jobs. There are midwives, there are nurses, there are taxi drivers, there's people who are self-employed, people who aren't. I know a lot of people think that we only deal with benefit debt, but we don't. It's actually people who are working.
Not everyone gets in debt as a result of overspending. Daniel's wages simply weren't enough to cover his living costs.
Well, I was struggling to pay my bills last year when my housing application was refused, and I had to choose between paying my bills or paying for my groceries, because I couldn't afford to pay for both at the time.
And you were working?
I was working full time. I was working nights, and it was very stressful at the time working nights, but on having the bills piling up and then my food, so it just put me under a lot of stress at the time, and it just felt like there was nowhere to go.
Is your experience typical of other people that you know, young lads who are trying to make their way in the world and really struggling because salaries are so low?
For me personally, it does feel like it's very much everybody else. It's like a generational thing that now we're struggling to pay for bills, and even getting onto the property ladder or even finding a home is difficult enough. And then living and paying for those bills and still managing your debts, it just seems impractical and impossible.
So you've got a year of living with this stress, living with this debt that's piling up.
Yeah.
At what point did you make a change, and how did you make a change? What did you do?
Got a letter, woke up, and I was just reading it, and I was just thinking this could be the end at the beginning, like this could really end everything for me. So I just called around and asked for maybe research on debt advice, which was when I first came to Jubilee Debt Advice, and they had a look at all my finances and they found a solution for me to pay them off with what I was already earning at the time.
So you've still got the debt, but they negotiated with the lenders to reduce your weekly or monthly payments?
Yes.
And how does that feel when you've just got that weight that's lifted from you a bit?
I'd say blessed, really do, because it's just taking that first step and asking for someone for help, and then being offered a lifeline, essentially, that I can actually get myself out of this black hole that I felt like I've dug myself into, and I know what mistakes I've made, and I know not to make them again.
I love a good mooch around the shops. Who doesn't? But this so-called consumer society means more and more of us are getting into the kind of debt that we simply can't afford to repay.
The rise in the stores on the high street where you can go and get a large TV or a sofa or whatever it is that you want, and you'll be paying back at an extortionate rate, has that pushed more people through your doors?
We do have clients that buy things from stores where they can pay weekly. Because obviously if they're getting paid weekly, then it's easier to pay weekly than to go somewhere to pay monthly. And I don't think they've always understood of how expensive it can work out. And that's part of our job, is to say to people, look, you need to either renegotiate it, or we can look at somewhere else where you could get similar goods at a cheaper rate. So at the end of the day, you'll end up with more money in your pocket.
Many of my parents' generation wouldn't have dreamt of taking out credit. If they couldn't afford to buy it, well, they just didn't have it. But now we live in a consumer society, and items that were once luxuries, like computers and mobile phones, they're almost everyday essentials. Organisations like the Big Help Project have the task of managing what seems to me an impossible situation.
Shops on the high street sell the dream. The televisions, the lifestyle, the three-piece suites, the kitchens, they sell the dream. We need to manage that dream for people, because you can't just go out there and say, I want everything here and now. It's about how do we try and educate people, both in the way they borrow money, but in what they borrow it for and how much they borrow it for.